It's My Nerd World, a Star Wars show. This week, Finn to return in new post The Rise of Skywalker movie. We have some Skeleton Crew and Andor Season 2 details, and I just wrapped up watching the Disney Gallery for The Mandalorian Season 3, and I will share with you my thoughts.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now, you're coming together. Is your undoing.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you.
Always.
My Nerd World.
Welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice, a Star Wars show. Thank you so much for checking out another episode. As always, you can email me, TalkShowNerd @gmail.com. You can also leave a comment up on YouTube or head on over to mynerdworld.net, where you can find out all about the podcast that I produce, along with my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK, where you can follow a ragtag squadron of pilots and one reluctant hero on a journey of survival from Earth to the far reaches of space as they fight for humanity's future among the stars. If you want paperback copies of any of the books in the series, autographed for free, I can sell them to you direct. I have quite a few here sitting in a box here at home, and the shipping is only $5 plus the regular price of what you would typically pay on Amazon. So if you want details about that, I will share that with you at the end of this week's episode. But you can email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, and I will give you all the details. So again, we'll get into that a bit at the end of the episode. It continues to be kind of quiet in the world of Star Wars. We did get a new documentary. Talk a bit about that here coming up in just a moment. Everything is kind of calm before we start getting into more promotion of Ahsoka coming out in August. A lot of the focus right now has obviously been around Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny for Lucasfilm and for Disney. I did put out, you may or may not know, I did put out a spoiler review of Dial of Destiny, which you can check out here on this podcast channel or on YouTube as well under the My Nerd World YouTube page. I really enjoyed the movie, and it has me wanting a new Star Wars film even more so than I did before, and a bit excited for what James Mangold might bring to his Star Wars movie set thousands of years before the events of the High Republic and the prequels. And I'll talk a little bit more about James Mangold here in just a moment. First, I want to get into a bit of the Mandalorian Season 3 Disney Gallery documentary.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
I love these documentaries. I've said many times on the show that I love watching the behind the scenes of the creation of some of my favorite content. I picked up the Avatar: The Way of Water Blu-ray recently. I've been going through the special features and the documentaries for that film, a film that I absolutely love. And one thing in particular that I really like about the Star Wars documentaries, especially for a show like Mando, and Book of Boba Fett fits into this as well, Obi-Wan Kenobi was probably not surprisingly, even on the documentary side, they just didn't quite get into the details that I was hoping for. Be that as it may, for Book of Boba Fett and the Mando documentaries, the galleries that they've released, and this one included, I really love getting into the insight of Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and the creative process. Parts and aspects of the series that I was kind of about when you, for me at least, when you hear the context of what it was they were trying to achieve, what their motivation was, I find a level of appreciation that perhaps I didn't have before watching it. Now, it doesn't mean that I like the episodes anymore, but I get a better idea of what it was that they were going for. Some of the lower points of The Mandalorian Season 3, specifically the episode towards the end where they end up on the planet with Lizzo and Jack Black, I just think that the inclusion of those high-profile actors and actresses, and Christopher Lloyd falls into this as well. For me, it removes me out of the element of this journey that I'm on and reminds me that I'm watching a show. It takes me out of it. It's very similar to the uncanny valley that you get when they're doing de-aging on characters. I mentioned this quite a bit, even though I thought they did an amazing job in the de-aging process for Harrison Ford in The Dial of Destiny. There was a moment watching that film where I was not even paying attention to the dialogue because I was so focused on just looking at Harrison Ford and the fact that he was younger again. And when they include those high-profile celebrities, it takes me out of the show. It's a minor complaint, but I almost wish that they would take the approach that George Lucas did initially when he made the first Star Wars movie, in that he wanted to cast, relatively unknown actors and actresses, which is why at first he wasn't going to hire Harrison Ford to play Han Solo, because he had just put him in American Graffiti. And I wish, because they're taking the opposite approach, and it's clear when you watch the documentary that they talk specifically about, like Bryce Dallas Howard directed that episode that had Jack Black, Lizzo, and Christopher Lloyd in it. And it was telling, I thought, when she read the script and she was excited for what she was seeing and knew that it was going to be a lighter toned episode of The Mandalorian, even though it had some very serious implications. But even she said that when she found out, like, who were we going to cast for these characters, and she found out that Jon Favreau had already picked Christopher Lloyd and Jack Black and Lizzo, she was like, oh, wow. But there was this, like, behind her smile and alleged excitement, I got a sense that she was kind of like, oh, I would have liked to have chosen who they were. I could have been reading into it, but that was the vibe that I got. I will say, on the positive front, and something that I didn't pick up on, and I'm looking forward to going back and watching the episode, but one of the earlier episodes in the season, the one that was bookended, that had the bookends of the space sequences with the Mandalorian and Bo-Katan, when they spent the majority of the episode on Coruscant, and it slowed down quite a bit, and we had the train sequence, and that episode, and I did not pick up on this, probably because I'm not as familiar with Hitchcock, but the vibe that they were going for in that episode was Alfred Hitchcock. And now I want to go back and watch it, knowing that they were intentionally slowing down. I mean, it was clear that they were, and they were going for a particular vibe. I just didn't know what vibe that was. And once I found out through this Mandalorian documentary for Season 3 that it was Alfred Hitchcock, I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. So all that is to say, if you haven't watched it yet, it's about an hour long. And provides a lot of really relevant insight into Season 3, and a season that I enjoyed. It had its highs and lows, but I'll definitely be going back and rewatching it, more so than I've mentioned many times, the Book of Boba Fett, and certainly Obi-Wan Kenobi. All right, let's move on to some of the news and rumors that are out there right now.
This is not going to go the way you think.
On the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, James Mangold of Ford versus Ferrari and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the director, he said that he was working a while back on a borderline R-rated single-planet spaghetti western Boba Fett movie until it was pulled after Solo came out. He revealed that he was writing it as well, which makes a lot of sense. If you go back and watch, say, Logan, 3:10 to Yuma, the Wolverine, which I was actually watching today, I didn't realize what a fan I was of James Mangold. Also, again, directed Ford versus Ferrari. But you go back and watch Logan, 3:10 to Yuma, and the Wolverine, and you could absolutely see how a harder-edged, Western-themed Boba Fett movie could play out under the direction and writing of a James Mangold. That also goes to show just, what an impact it had when the Solo movie came out, and just, how scared they ended up becoming in terms of releasing Star Wars movies. And you have to think they know what it is that they're talking about, but it was a timing issue. I think everybody saw that it was a timing issue. Solo is a solid Star Wars movie. As a matter of fact, I have it I'm on vacation right now, so I have an old CD wallet that I keep Blu-rays in of movies that I want to watch over vacation, and the Star Wars movie that I have picked out right now happens to be the Solo movie. He also hints that the word Jedi may not be used in his Star Wars movie, considering the period it's in, meaning the discovery of the first Jedi, but they may not actually end up naming the Jedi or coming to that name. Also, there's rumors of a through-line connection from James Mangold's film, again, set thousands of years before the events of the High Republic and the prequels, and the upcoming Episode 10, as I'm calling it, but the post The Rise of Skywalker movie, which makes sense depending on what the story is for Daisy Ridley, building a new Jedi Order, as we've been told sort of officially, and then going back to finding the first Jedi. It'd be interesting to see how that carries through. I personally hope that they use some of what was in The Last Jedi in this Rey movie. I think that the inclusion of the shot in The Last Jedi towards the end of Rey putting the ancient Jedi texts into the drawer on the Millennium Falcon could be a really fantastic tie-in if she still is going off of those books. So I really hope that they end up making that connection. Star Wars really benefits from that, in my opinion. And attaching these films, especially the ones that are so controversial, I think is only beneficial. So, and again, as I've said many times, I just want a Star Wars movie on the big screen. Speaking of the post The Rise of Skywalker film, Latino Review has a story up that John Boyega may return as Finn for that upcoming Star Wars film alongside Daisy Ridley. In an unexpected twist, the article says, rumors have surfaced suggesting that Lucasfilm, along with Daisy Ridley, are currently trying to get actor John Boyega to reprise his iconic role as Finn in the upcoming Star Wars New Jedi Order film being directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. If true, this will have Star Wars enthusiasts and fans of Boyega's portrayal of Finn abuzz with excitement. And Latino Review has had some solid reporting in the past. One of the individuals who was most responsible for that reporting is no longer with that outlet. It would, again, make a lot of sense, though. I don't want to make the same arguments that I've made in recent podcasts about this. I'll do the quick version. It only benefits this next movie coming after The Rise of Skywalker to have some of the characters from The Rise of Skywalker. Even if it is no longer an extension of the Skywalker story, I still think it benefits them to call it Episode 10. We're moving forward in the storyline. We're going to have Daisy Ridley. We're going to have Rey's character from the previous film. So it would make sense that Finn would be in there too. And it would make sense that Oscar Isaac is in the film as well, even if it does tell a different story that's no longer attached to the Skywalkers, apart from Rey being a Skywalker, which I personally just think is a lot of spin in the way this movie is being talked about. I mean, these stories are always going to be centered on the Skywalkers, even if it's not just a central part of the story. And to diminish Rey taking on the Skywalker mantle and have that not be a part of her persona, I think would be an absolutely missed opportunity. Moving on, Entertainment Weekly has an article. Many fans aren't quite sure what to expect from the third upcoming series. This piece is about the Skeleton Crew. The entry from John Watts and Chris Ford has been billed by Watts as a story about a group of kids about 10 years old from a tiny little planet who accidentally get lost in the Star Wars galaxy. And it's the story of their journey to find their way home. So who exactly is the Skeleton Crew for? Kids, adults, or both? In the Entertainment Weekly article, they go on to say, we got some guidance when star Jude Law and co-creator Ford stopped by Entertainment Weekly's podcast, The Dagobah Dispatch, and chatted about the new show and what kind of tone we should expect. Ford says the Skeleton Crew tone is an adventure. We wanted it to be a lot of fun, but of course, along with adventure comes the downside of it, which is danger. When the kids are in danger, it's extra fraught. So we played with that. But overall, we wanted it to be just a fun adventure. Now, as for whether the show is specifically targeting younger audiences with its pint-sized cast, Ford notes, hopefully it can be for all ages. When we told Kathy Kennedy about that, and we wanted to go for the Amblin tone, which she perfected over the years, what she would say is that they never thought of those as movies for kids. They just happened to be about kids. A story of a kid going on an adventure, so it could be for everyone. Bothered isn't the right word. The way that that's framed, and the times when people have made comments, and there's like a running gag, a meme, a joke of, Star Wars is for kids, and then somebody will go and post online something really violent that takes place in one of the Clone Wars episodes or in a movie or something like that. And, really it comes down to just being written in such a way where there's a sense of reality to it, where you're not bringing in a lot of profanity or a lot of innuendo or sex. I think oftentimes people think of this is made for kids because it doesn't have those things, when I would go and argue that no, it can be for both. That's how you make things for both. You just don't include, because it's not necessary a lot of times, profanity, innuendo, sex, or nudity. But you can still tell sort of an adult story without those things and have kids in it and make it appealing for both kids and adults. I'll take this opportunity to talk a bit about my EMBARK book series. And I mention it every single time that I do the promotion for it, and that is, I wrote those books for adults because I am an adult. But at the same time, it's popular and has been among kids, as young as 11 years old. There's a relatability to it, and I didn't include, there's a lot of action, there's death in the story, but there's no profanity and there's no sex, and if there's anything even alluded to that, it's on the most benign of level. There is a segment of the population, by the way, where that's just normal life. It seems like now, in so much of what we see in our shows these days, is that it creates this hyper realistic or hyper real version of what people think the world is like, and maybe there are portions of society that I'm not attached to. I'm sure there are, but I know for the people that I hang around, we're not talking and acting like the majority of people that you see in a lot of shows. And so, yeah, I like the fact that they have to sell it this way for the audience, because people will think it's a kiddie movie. But when you talk about the Amblin movies, there's a reason why those movies have stood the test of time. And it's just because there's universal themes in there, and kids can watch it, and adults can also enjoy it. It's something that I would have never sort of equated that. My books are like the Amblin tone. I've always equated my books to just being like Star Wars. There's death and adult themes in that, but kids can read it or listen to it. Getting back to this article, as for the adult in the room, or on the screen, as it were, Jude Law would neither confirm nor deny that he's playing a Jedi, though his character does levitate an object in the trailer shown at the Star Wars Celebration in April. I can't tell you very much about my character, the actor says. He is someone the children meet in their attempt to get home. He is, like a lot of the world that they experience, contradictory, and at times a place of nurture, and other times a place of threat. So I'm looking forward to the show. It's hard to sort of get excited about it until I see more. I saw, a version of the trailer shot through like a potato from Star Wars Celebration. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of what they have to offer, and I hope to get more excited for it. It's just it's tough. It's tough to get overly excited when it comes to Star Wars content these days for the live action aspect of it, just because it's been such a mixed bag, in my opinion. Lastly, just one little tidbit that I thought was interesting, and again, tying in other content. New set details show that Andor Season 2 may be returning to Naboo. There was some pictures that were snapped of a set from Andor Season 2, and it seems pretty clear that they had designed it to look very much like one of the set pieces from Naboo. And I think that would be a great move. The inclusion of any of those planets from the prequels is always a bonus when it comes to the new content. And I said a long time ago that if I were to go and say, make any changes or wanted something different for The Rise of Skywalker, I would have preferred The Rise of Skywalker ending on Naboo, because technically that's where it all started. I don't mind a return to Tatooine, but I thought it would have been really interesting and really tie the entire series together if that's where Rey decided to go and call home, since that's technically where everything started from. But alas, that didn't happen. And at the same time, I still love The Rise of Skywalker. So, all right, let's go ahead and get to your listener feedback this week.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
So on the last episode, I was talking quite a bit about The Rise of Skywalker, the box office, whether or not people really hate that movie as much as they say they hate that movie. Gentle Win wrote in, thank you, Gentle Win, and said, The Rise of Skywalker made half of what The Force Awakens did. Yes, I think people just gradually lost interest during the sequels. I was in a Star Wars chat the other day, and the host did a poll and asked how many people are interested in this new movie. There are about 4,000 people in the room. About 70% said they were not interested, and about the same amount said they were interested in the James Mangold movie. This is in no way scientific, but I just feel for Lucasfilm to decide to do a sequel so soon to those movies just shows their inability to read the room. I would disagree with that only from within the fandom, and that particular type of fandom that is going to be in a Star Wars chat. I'm not surprised that that's the response that you get. I think if you were to go and add in, or specifically people who are casual fans that will always go see a Star Wars movie in theaters, maybe once or twice, and you would get a different response about that. Now, and you're not wrong in terms of the box office, but what's interesting is I actually went back and looked at the box office returns for all three of the trilogies. So it was actually the prequels that largely were the most consistent in the box office. You did have a drop, a pretty big drop, between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. However, Revenge of the Sith actually regained almost what The Phantom Menace made in terms of box office. Also, what was interesting is that you almost had a similar drop between the first movie of a trilogy and the last movie of a trilogy, being The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, from A New Hope to Return of the Jedi. You had $775,000 plus for A New Hope at the time, and then Return of the Jedi only made $475,000. So you're getting close to almost half there. Now, when you look at just for what it's worth, right? When you look at the drop between The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, you're right. The Force Awakens made about $68,223,624, where The Rise of Skywalker made $1,077,022,372. But you factor in the dramatic change in the fandom commentary that for the first time ever in a Star Wars movie cycle had to deal with. YouTube, Twitter, the internet, that cultivated a ton of controversy in the wake of The Last Jedi, it's not surprising the difference in the box office. And any film franchise right now would be ecstatic to get $1 billion plus at the box office. And that is why, in my opinion, Rey is coming back and potentially Finn now too. And just to drive that point home, when you look at the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, the prequels, you started to see a bit of that groupthink in the fandom, but we were still sort of in the earlier days of the internet, and we were before social networking at that point in time. The sequel trilogy was the first trilogy that had to deal with social networking and views and opinions being formed and cemented in these online groups. And I think it's actually quite commendable that the Rise of Skywalker did the box office it did, given just how much controversy there was for the Last Jedi, and just how many individuals hopped on board the hate train after that film came out. So I think that's a testament to that movie. And again, I'll say it, I'm an apologist. It's all subjective, but I really love The Rise of Skywalker. Does it live up to a movie like Endgame that culminates that first phase, or that first 10 years of the Marvel MCU and all those movies? No. Did it have to? I don't know. They were different. They're different types of movies. Would I have liked something that had the emotional impact of an Endgame? Yeah, but I'm still going to take The Rise of Skywalker over Endgame on my desert island discs if I can only choose between one or the other. I just think The Rise of Skywalker is a really fun movie and a completely adequate finale for the series as a whole. We're talking about goofy space opera films. I mentioned this during the review for The Dial of Destiny, but I think it rings true for Star Wars too. We romanticize these movies in our minds. You go back and watch the original trilogy, and while it's spectacular, it's goofy too, and it's got silly things in it. Our headcanon is strong, and it messes things up. All right, let's go to Miranda as I go off on a tangent. It's the fandom being the fandom again because reasons. And it's getting old. The movie has barely made it into production, and we're acting like it's coming out a month from now. We don't even know when it's going to hit production officially. We don't know what it looks like, so who is anyone to judge something that has not actually happened? I actually don't understand, but it's stupid. It's just stupid drama for the sake of it until we see a trailer. Can we stop pretending we already know everything before everyone else does? Enough. Let's all be at least thankful we have new movies coming right now, for goodness sake. Yeah. Now, the internet's going to do what the internet is going to do. There's nothing you can do about that. All right, I wanted to include in a couple of other listener feedbacks. These are in response to my How to Save a Modern Blockbuster. Friend of the show, Irene Davis, writes, I don't think it's even scarcity. It's just rubbish that is being churned out by the MCU and good old-fashioned characters being replaced. In Star Wars, they should not have killed off Ben Solo or replaced Henry Cavill as Superman. Bond movies thrive. So does Mission Impossible, Avatar, Top Gun, Dune, because you just know you're going to get quality directors in the movies that aren't fractured and schizophrenic. We have to wait and see. We have a richness of material in Star Wars, but should not be afraid to go forward. John Wick is a classic example. People know what they're going to get. I go to the movies to be entertained, and I stay away from social media altogether prior to any movie now. I want to find out for myself, and honestly can't stand the negativity and nastiness. I detect a clear division now as regards to people that have nothing positive to say in their podcasts. They use Star Wars as an example, especially the last three, continuously wanting to divide Star Wars fans by pre-Disney and Disney, and then use the shock value clickbait driven by innuendo and lies. So the point I'm trying to make is the really big podcasters are starting to suffer good, while Star Wars fans the world over continue to enjoy their content by switching off from those sites or fighting back. These next 2 years give a clear indication of what that will mean for Star Wars movies. The MCU has fared far worse when went to go see The Flash, and my God, it was so bad. And see, it's all subjective because I really enjoyed The Flash. And has been a spate of their recent movies, and people are fed up of sitting through 2.5 hours of garbage. It's the fanaticism that's attached to the brands as well that puts people off. And again, like I said, it's subjective. I really enjoyed The Flash. I thought it had typical last act problems, but overall I was entertained and I look forward to watching it again. But I'll go back to the point I was making in How to Save the Modern Blockbuster, and I just mean in terms of promoting a new franchise. I would do everything in my power to make the marketing around it and the news around it as scarce as possible. Take away the ability of fandoms to form before it comes out and try to give people a genuinely surprising movie theater experience with as little expectations as possible going into seeing a film. Michael E. Tennant writes, "You're absolutely right. It's something I've been thinking about as it relates to my children, since they have so much content to consume compared to what was available when we were at that age. As a result, nothing is special." Thank you, everybody, for the listener feedback this week. I greatly appreciate it. Before I let you go, I wanted to remind you that if you're interested in picking up an autographed paperback copy, or you just want a paperback copy, it doesn't have to be autographed, right? But I'll autograph it for free if you want me to. I do have copies that you can buy from me direct of any of the books, any of the 7 books in the series. If you're interested in purchasing a paperback version of any of the books in my EMBARK series, just email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Or if you leave a comment up on YouTube, leave me an email address where I can send you back the details. I can have the books shipped out to you in just a few days. And again, cost of shipping is $5 plus the cost of the book itself. And as a matter of fact, it's actually less expensive to purchase them from me now because Amazon went and raised their prices and forced everybody to have to raise their prices in response to inflation. All of these books that I purchased before the price hike, so you actually get the copies a little bit cheaper. So if you're interested in picking up any of my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK, it's epic. It's filled with romance and a little bit of romance and a lot of action. Then email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Or, of course, you can always go to amazon.com or mynerdworld.net and pick up the ebook, hardcover, or audiobooks on mynerdworld.net or amazon.com. Right now, I am running a special for the trilogy in ebook. The first 3 books, EMBARK, Treasure in Darkness, and The Vanishing War. You can actually pick up all 3 in an ebook box set for just 99 cents. So go and support my nerd world, and at the same time, grab yourself some science fiction to read if you happen to be on vacation like I am for the summer. As always, thank you so much for checking out this episode. I'll be back again next week with more Star Wars news. Until that time, I hope wherever you are happy, you're healthy, and you are safe. We'll talk to you then. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.